Hello, I'm happy to be here. I actually live down in Bustleton, so I drove up last night to come up and see all you guys. But yeah, so today I am talking about agents all grown up, and it's all about the Microsoft Foundry Agent Service, and specifically hosted agents on the Hosted Agent Service. How many of you have been looking around at the Microsoft AI tools and Foundry and all that? Have anyone sort of played around with that before? Yeah, so a couple of you, that's cool. It's okay if you haven't. I'll try to make this so that you can follow along no matter where you're at on your journey using agents and AI and the Microsoft tool set. But, let's see. Whoops, sorry. This is a PDF, so I'm trying to figure out how to scroll nicely. Okay, let's go down here. Cool. So building an agent has actually gotten pretty easy. So using tools like our Claude Code and all the really advanced AI coding platforms that we have and all of the really nicely defined frameworks and things that are available for us now, creating an agent itself is the easy part. The part that's now really hard is actually getting it into production, following those guardrails and those safety nets that we need. You know, we were talking about having a 3-year-old in a garage with a chainsaw. Thinking about how can you put this into a production environment without having that 3-year-old go wild and cut everything down to death, deleting your data, your pod database, or leaking out sensitive customer information. We want the agents to be able to execute the tasks that they need to do, to be able to think and operate for themselves, because that's what an agent does, but make sure that there's some nice safety around it, that we can ensure that it's going to do it in a secure way, but also that it's done in a way that we don't have to maintain too much of that safety net. And a lot of it can actually be taken care of for us with the Microsoft Foundry AI Agent Service and the hosted version of that. But first, just a little bit more about me. So as mentioned, I am a principal software engineer at a company called MakerX. We are a research and development studio, and we work quite a lot with AI tools, and we do a lot of internal experiments for ourselves, as well as delivering AI services and platforms for our customers as well. So we are trying to keep up with everything, which is really hard to do. So a lot of us are still learning ourselves, but it's definitely something that we're looking at every day, and we're trying to learn and experiment and figure out what tools out there can help us do these type of activities, which is why I've started working with and learning about the Microsoft tool set to help us with that. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, so that's why Microsoft is my go-to choice of tooling. The Azure ecosystem I find quite easy to work with. And I'm a Women in Tech WA award winner, and I've been a software engineer for a number of years, building different types of web applications and working with all the different Azure services. So why is hosting agents hard? It's part of what we were talking about with, in the last talk, if you heard that, where we were talking about we need to make sure it has its own identity, that it has really locked down controls in terms of what is able to access. We want the agents to be able to go out and execute tools, because that's what makes it different from, say, generative AI. Generative AI is more there's inputs coming in and outputs, whereas agents are more executing actions. They're thinking for themselves. They're reading, they have memory, they might have different tools and things that they're looking up as they're doing it. Sometimes agents are executing other agents and talking to each other, so you can get pretty complex with it. But we want to make sure that we have all of that nice safety net around it as it's doing these things. So agents are stateful. They usually run some sort of arbitrary code and hold sensitive context. And as we were mentioned in the last talk, they're generally non-deterministic. So you don't always know what the outcome is going to be. If you say, hey, I want you to go do this action with my emails, it's not 100% guaranteed that it's not going to go and just delete everything. You have to make sure that it has the right controls in place so that it's not able to do that. So agents people started building them on their laptops or maybe on like an isolated machine that they had at home to try and make that security. But if you want to deploy it in an environment where you can scale to many customers, you can have people working on it in different aspects, and you can have it integrating with different parts of your software tooling, you want to deploy it into like your full enterprise production environment. But the three things that become most important there is that isolation. You don't want agents to be able to do untrusted things. You don't want them to, maybe there's some sensitive customer information that user 1 can access, but user 2 can't, and you want to make sure that agents understand those boundaries as well. So you want to have things isolated from each other. Having that identity so that you can really control what type of things they have access to, but also really easily be able to turn off and revoke any access if your agent does start going a bit rogue, which hopefully it doesn't. And then idle costs as well. So agents, a lot of times, what they're set up to do is they kind of just wait around. And they wait for someone to say, hey, go execute this task for me. Or maybe it's a scheduled job to say, at the end of each day, I want you to go, look through my meeting notes and pull out the most important things and create some new tasks for me to do tomorrow. That's an example of an agent that you might have set up to run at the end of each day. But while it's waiting around, waiting for that initiation action, depending on how you set it up, you might be paying for compute that you don't want to. So you really want to make sure that you don't have that idle cost, that it scales up and scales down as it needs to, and that you're only paying for what you actually need. So that's where the Microsoft Foundry Agent Service can really help you out. It gives you a lot of these tools out of the box. It has all these frameworks and pieces in place to help you get that nice setup and the nice control for you to really make sure you can have production enterprise-grade agent systems running for yourself and your customers. So agent service specifically is really about running those agents. So you're connecting to the models that are available in the Foundry platform. There's a responses API that runs under the hood that you can integrate with. So it's the single entry point for the agent and connecting to the models. There's the specific agent runtime. There's things for observability. So another really important aspect of production applications is being able to observe and have telemetry about what it's doing and what's going on, what it might be accessing, where it might be getting stuck, and being able to do all that. As well as a whole bunch of different tools for looking at different file systems, connecting to things like SharePoint if that's where your file code is, or setting out a message into Teams or whatnot. Agent Service and Microsoft Foundry has the capability to help you do that, as well as all the really important identity and security that we've been talking about here. So within the Microsoft Agent Service, they have two ways that you can build an agent. The first one is called a prompt agent. So that's really more just about focusing on the prompt side of things. So really you're authoring it, you have it in the Foundry platform, and Foundry is what executes and runs it for you. So you're generally at this, if you're going the prompt level, you generally define it more in the portal. It's often popular if it's like a lower code type of solution. There's no container, there's no compute. It hosts the runtime for you. So you're really just bringing the instructions and connecting it to the right models that you need. Now, if you want more of a robust framework where you are bringing your own code from somewhere else, it's maybe connecting to other applications, and you want it contained in that really secure private endpoint type of network environment, that's where the hosted agent service comes in. So this is more of you write the code and you bring it. You ship it as a container image, and so that's really hosting the agent as a container for you in the agent service. And it runs within its own isolated sandbox. So that's where you get that isolation, is that it has an isolated sandbox that only has the access and information, everything that you have told it that it can. It has its own file storage. So if it's needing to write and store things, and that's all session-based as well. So it's based on the session with the user, so that can help with that leakage of memory. It'll provision, so each agent will also get its own identity, and that's where we're talking about you don't want to have a shared identity for all of your agents, because then they can kind of go off and go rogue. So basically, when would you want to use each? They're both really good solutions, but yeah, the prompt agent often is a good starting point when you're just kind of figuring out the platform and figuring out services, playing around with agents. It's a great way to get started. And it's something that you can use in production, especially if it's maybe more of an internal to your company application. It's quite straightforward without needing orchestration of different agents talking to each other or reaching out to other endpoints and services. But if you want to go to that grown-up enterprise major production advanced platform, that's where the hosted agent version can be really handy for you. And there's also ability to integrate with things like webhooks, and there's the new the voice service as well, which is cool, where you could do something like that avatar that Oren was showing. So you can do some more advanced sort of processing with your hosted agents as well. But sometimes you don't need that much, that advanced of a tool. So as I mentioned, there's per session sandboxes. So it's a VM isolated per session, so they can't see each other. So if you're working on something confidential, your teammate who's using the same agent won't be able to have access to it. It's all per you. And it has that persistent file system. So you can have files that are part of that integration, part of that platform that you want as well. It also scales per session. So if you have the agent that's being used by your whole team, but maybe only one person's actively using it, it's going to scale just for that person's session. So it's not going to go stay as big for everyone. So it's really about how it's actually being used, and it does that automated scaling. Is all set up for you. And there's the observability built in, and versioning as well, which is really helpful because agents, if you have done work with agents before, a lot of times it's like these minor tweaks to try and get it in the right place. So we want to be able to keep the versioning for us there as well. As mentioned, enterprise ready by default. So it has that Entra ID that's already baked in, so you can give it the role-based access control, just like you would a user. So if it's connecting to a database or it's connecting to your storage account, for those connections, use the role-based access control, and then it uses the Entra permissions within the agent service. It also has private networking, so that's how you can make sure it has those network controls, content safety, and it's all about connecting to other resources. So it has the availability to connect into the rest of the Azure ecosystem, which makes it very powerful. And it's all about being an open platform. They wanted it to be code agnostic, so you can bring in any framework. So however you are writing your agent code, you can bring it in and host it on Agent Service, which is really cool. Cool. So let's get into actually something a bit more exciting than just me talking about it. Let's have a proper look at it. So if you haven't seen the Microsoft Foundry portal, so it used to be called, it's gone through a few evolutions of the name, but I think last was Azure Foundry. They've uplifted it to be more generically Microsoft because they have like the Microsoft Copilot extension and all of that as well. But at one point it was just Azure AI Services, and before that you might have heard Cognitive Services. So there's been a lot of names throughout the life of all of the AI tooling that you'll find, but the current latest name is Microsoft Foundry. And within the Foundry, they've really built it along the lines of kind of that developer lifecycle. So at the top here, you'll see there's discover, build, and operate. So they're kind of taking you along the steps of the journey that you might go through as a developer who's working with these tools. And you see right here on the homepage, they immediately are, hey, you can build an agent, you can code an agent. But let's kind of just take a look around. So if we do go to Discover, you'll see there's a whole bunch of featured models. So there's a lot of great model support. So if I'm a big fan of Claude, use it every day for all of my stuff. They now support all of the Claude Anthropic models. They have all the OpenAI stuff, of course, and things like the Meta and DeepSeek and all of that as well. When you are looking at the model catalog, one thing is always the availability of the regions. But if you're specifically working with agents, you do want to make sure, where is it? Supported features. So there's a section here that says supported features. And if you click Agent Service, a majority of them are supported, but just make sure that you choose one that is, because there's a few that aren't. So if you are specifically working with Agent Service, make sure the model is supported there as well. And then agents. So they are actually, on the Discover side of things, they have a lot of sort of starter agent templates that you can use, that you can play around with and get started in yourself. A lot of these are more prompt-based, but you can look in them. So blog post drafter, for example, it tells you what it does, and if you just click the button, it'll create it within your Foundry for you there, which is cool. So you can start playing with it immediately. And then tools. There's a wide range of tool sets, so you can connect to, like I said, any of the Azure systems. You can connect to your Microsoft Teams. So you can get, for example, your agent to send something out to your team at the end of the day. You can also connect to like Slack and an email service or any sort of tools, and create custom tools within your organization as well. So there can be custom tools that your company has built that you're plugging in here to use for your agents. If we go to the build side of things, so obviously I have a few agents here that have already been built. One of them, I'll just start with this bottom one. So this one is, you'll see the type is prompt, so it'll tell you here whether it's a prompt or hosted. This trip itinerary designer one is just one of those pre-starter ones that I just clicked create, and it set it up here. But if we're looking in here, you can see there's the instructions that came from the starter kit, which is really the prompt of, the system prompt of, hey, you are an itinerary designer who can do all these cool things. But even within here, there's a playground. So you can go in and chat and start testing it out all from within Foundry. And within this, you can immediately do a publish to a web app and start playing out and sharing it with other people as well. I will go to the hosted agent, because that's more of what I wanted to talk about today. So the hosted agent, as it looks very similar when you click on it, so you do have to see, okay, the kind here is hosted, but this one I set up from my local machine. Maybe I'll, we'll talk about this a bit first, and then I'll show you the code that's behind there as well. But basically, I set it up in my machine. It was packaged up as a container image, and that was put on the Azure Container Registry, and then then deployed onto the hosted Azure services. So when we look at the code, you'll see I have a whole bunch of bicep files to do that. You can do it through the command line, but obviously that means you can also integrate it into any sort of your build pipelines that you want as well. So it can all be done that way. You can also do the right-click deploy type style from VS Code as well, which is there. But yeah, if I go to the code asset, you'll see it points to a container image on my Azure Container Registry. One thing I wanted to talk about here is guardrails. So I don't have any guardrails configured just yet, but you can just add them in within the portal here. You can also do it from the bicep level, but it's always good to sort of look from here. So they have some content safety ones that are pre-built that you can put in there. So if it's something that you have, maybe it's something that kids are using, you want to make sure there's no bad language or anything bad going on, or just in general, just making sure everything is none of we don't want any of this stuff. So I'll select all of these. There you go, sensitive. Yeah, and then you can also do things like make sure there's no PII in there and all of that as well. So yeah, we're just gonna click this one. You can say like the sensitivity rating, and then add the control all in, and then your thing is ready to go. I won't go through that whole thing just now, but you can see that it's pretty easy to do. This voice mode is the new preview that it switches to a voice first experience, where the default, as you see here, is a chat first type of experience. There's also tabs here for being able to trace the different sessions and conversations that have been had. So you can do that, the watching to see kind of where it's going and what it's doing. So I can look at what happened here. I can look at the full log stream, the files that were part of that session, etc. If it loads. There you go. Yeah, we'll look at those after I run it for you. And then evaluations. So this is something that I haven't set up yet, but I thought maybe we could set it up together. So when you have an agent, you want to continuously look at, operating in the way that I want? Is it giving me the right results? And one of the things that you can do to help you with that is set up evaluations. So they have some, so here it's talking about also rubrics that you can put in there, describing your agent and giving it a score. But we can create some automatic evaluations that I want to evaluate the agent to see if it does the right thing. We'll just do individual turns. And you can also do synthetic data generation. So you don't need to give it huge data sets of things for it to be able to test and evaluate. It just sets it all for you. So I'm just going to let it generate. Ah, dang it. I don't have a prompt for this. That's all right. We'll do it later. But you could do it. All right. That's all right. I thought I would do it on the fly. That's always the fun thing. Anyways, OK, we'll go to the code. We'll look at the code next. So in my code, so in Visual Studio Code, something that's really cool is they have what's called the Foundry Toolkit, if you can see that on the left-hand side. So this is an extension for Visual Studio Code, which is all about being able to build and deploy and test out your Microsoft Foundry tools locally. So it's really useful. And you can see, so the top part is the things that are deployed into Azure, and then the bottom bit is the local things that I have. Within my file system here, so I ran one of the initial setups. There's the Azure Developer CLI that you can just run. I think it's AZD init. I have it on it's on the Foundry docs of like creating a prompt agent, creating a hosted agent. There's just like a one-line command to do it within the CLI, which I think is really nice. So yeah, so AZD AI Agent Init, and it'll scaffold a project for you, including a lot of the initial sort of bicep templates that you'll need to deploy it, which is, I think, really handy. So you'll see I have the main. It's a Python app, which has using all of the agent framework. If we go through those, what's called different nodes within here, let me find the first thing that's useful. So there's a shared state between the nodes. So that means each little section of code can share information. So you want to set it up that way. But then each one will take in some artifacts. And then there's some prompts for certain things. So in this case, the agent I have is a proposal prompt. And there's the overall agent is a proposal creator. So there's different sort of steps in the process that has things like to extract the content that we need. There's ones to find the right skill from our skill library. And then there's ones to actually generate the content and all of that. And then you'll also see on here, I have things like in the bicep templates, I have like Azure AI Search connected, the AI project, all of that good stuff. So what I'm going to do, I will open up, there's something called the Agent Inspector. So this is how you can bug and deploy locally to test it out before you actually put it up into Agent Foundry Service. So I'm going to start, and hopefully once it starts, it should reconnect, because it's not running at the moment. So it's just running. And it didn't start up. Let me refresh, maybe. Oh, there we go. Refreshed, and it's all good. So one thing that's really cool is, how do I get back to, here we go. So because I have in my workflow, there's actually a few different steps. There's this thing called the Workflow Builder, which lets you visualize the different steps. From within the Foundry portal, you can actually build a prompt from the builder first, and then it'll generate the code behind for you. But as a developer, I wrote the code first, and then this workflow automatically kind of generated itself. But I'll zoom in here so we can see what is going on. And it's a pretty linear workflow, but maybe you might have different branches and things going in parallel. And this will help you to observe and visualize the process that your agent is supposed to be taking as it goes through. And maybe there's little loops of, if you don't find this, go do that sort of cool stuff. So here's where it intakes the information. The next node extracts it. Then it selects the skill. I haven't run it, so it's not in there yet. It'll compose. It'll then render. then it'll respond. So this really helps for, when you're trying to do things. If I want to actually interact with it now, I can go to my playgrounds. Let's see. It's loading. And I clicked it twice, so now it's loading twice. But the playground is an integrated, that same playground that we saw within the Foundry. You get that integrated within your VS Code, so you can immediately ask it questions and play around. Hopefully, if it works. This is why. Otherwise, we'll just go to the deployed version and do it from there. But basically, what this agent is doing, so the agent is as I said, it's called the MakerX presentation, what is it called? Proposal agent. And so within MakerX, we have quite a few different skills that we use internally to help us when we're creating different things. And so what I've done is I've taken our skill library, which is just a number of really like instructions and prompts and things like that, and I've combined it with the agent service. So the agent is the one that's now executing those skills. And so I set it up so that it could create some proposals for us. So we work with clients. We often are having meetings with them where there's like transcripts and stuff like that. So I have some fake transcripts that are used as input. And right now they're just in the file system. I'll go to the deployed one and we'll look at it from there. So if I am in the deployed one and I say, create a proposal, if I can type, for me for a bank. This is a made up bank, it is not real. What it'll do is it will look in its catalog of transcripts that it has, and it'll find the ones only related to that customer that I mentioned. And if I had set this up for real life production, I would make sure that the person asking the question has the access to that customer's information, that they're able to see that. The files would probably be stored somewhere on, well, we use Google Drive, but you can also connect tools via like SharePoint and whatnot. So we can see on this right-hand side that it is doing some things. I'll scroll to the top because there's a whole bunch of stuff that it's doing here. So look, so it's found the system prompt of you are the proposal agent. It's going through and actually completed. But you can see it goes through the different steps. It'll find the right one. So it found Acme Corp, which is not the right one. So hopefully I didn't use that because I asked it specifically for Better Bank. So we'll see what it came up with. I'll look at the files that it loaded. So these files, of course it used the wrong one. Let's see. This is also agents going rogue, like I said. Say what about the bank? First we'll look at what it created. I'll just download it so we can look at that. And then we'll see what happens here. This is also where that human in the loop is really important. Obviously, you've seen the T-shirts that everyone is wearing. Oh, here you go. So this is what it actually created. But as I asked for a proposal about Better Bank, and it gave me a proposal about Acme. So you wouldn't want the agent to go off, create the proposal, and immediately mail it out. You would want some sort of human-in-the-loop step to make sure, hey, it actually got the right content. And that's where you want it to have that interaction where you can chat and be like, hey, that's not the right customer. Go and grab that other customer instead. And obviously, you'd want to read the content and verify. But part of what we've done, you can see this looks quite similar to my actual slide deck because I used the same skills and templating agent to be able to create my slide deck. This is the official MakerX branding, and this is a tool that we do use for our client proposals, these skills. Not the version that I've put together, but there's some things obviously that are a bit odd with, like, say, the formatting, so it doesn't get it 100% right, but it gets you maybe probably 80% of the way there, assuming obviously it grabs the right customer. So we'll look through this a little more, but we'll see. I'll send this message and see if if it figures out its problem. But that's where also like the testing and the verification, putting in those guardrails, refining your prompts and everything can come into play as well. So if you are seeing that it's repeatedly not getting the right information, that means your prompt needs to be evolved a bit more so that it knows where to look for who's the right customer to grab the information from. But you can see it does some, it's used our colors. It made things look quite nice. Obviously, I'm not going to read through this to understand if all the content that is in there is 100% accurate. But like I said, it gives you a good shape of the way there. So let's see what it does now that I'm saying, what about the bank? Let me just verify I'm using the right name. Better bank, yeah, interesting. That's okay. We can, I want better bank proposal. That's always the fun thing with AI doing its own thing and live things. But we can look at the monitoring of what it's done during the session. Maybe tools. Where is it? That's all right. But you can do things like memory stores. So if you want it to remember things across sessions to really get advanced in that way. If you want to connect to some better knowledge bases, there's the new sort of knowledge Foundry IQ that you can connect to give it some really robust information about whatever background it needs to be able to execute the tasks. There's tools that you can connect to do things like integrate into SharePoint and read the files directly from there. You can have it read in the files from SharePoint, the transcripts, create the proposal, store it on SharePoint. You can maybe it'll send you a message saying, hey, I'm done, review it, and then post on Teams for you to get that whole round the loop, or maybe even email it out directly to the client with a preformed email. So you can set all of that up here and create custom tools and the like. I will go back to my slides because I think I'm basically out of time. But basically, I want you to take this home. If you haven't played around with Agent Service before, or if you haven't built an agent, it's actually really quite straightforward to build agents these days. Like I said, especially if you're using like Copilot or Claude Code or whatnot, getting the foundations in place and helping you set up those initial prompts and even test data. And I got it to set up the test client transcripts for me. That was all actually really straightforward. And now it's getting it into an enterprise-grade environment where you can have all that security and the networking that Microsoft provides for you, already all configured and set up for you in the Foundry, using the hosted agent service. So all of that is taken care of. I don't have to worry about it as a developer. It happens for me behind the scenes using their tools. There's some really great quick starts and docs to help you get started. There's a lot of good samples if you want to experiment and play around. There's also something called Forgebook. So I believe this is built by one of the either cloud developer advocates or principal engineers who work on Foundry. But this is a cookbook for all the things AI. So there's a lot of really great resources here, learning guides and things to learn. So you can click through this and go through, there's like step-by-step tutorials and code on GitHub and whatnot that'll help you be able to get hands-on and play around with it, within Azure, all for you. So, and then the other thing is there's some really great videos online that Microsoft have put out. Both they just had Build recently. Oh, one important thing I forgot to mention is that the hosted agent service is still in public preview. It was supposed to be generally available at the end of this month, but they've been saying early July. So technically not 100% production ready, I would say, until it's GA. But it's coming very, very soon. They said end of June, now early July. But definitely keep an eye on that space. They're forever releasing really awesome new tools, like that voice live thing. And it's expanding so quickly and so rapidly, and there's a lot of really great learning resources online. So that's it from me for today. So thank you very much. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you around. Thank you.